we're going to look at what data is and the types of data and what are the implications of actually knowing the different types of data. Okay, so first of all, we need to start by looking at the term called a variable. A variable. So, for example, we want to determine whether a drug X can reduce body temperature. Okay, if you have a fever, when you take a drug, when you take a drug X, the drug will reduce your body temperature. Okay. Now, how do you know that actually the body temperature will actually reduce? So, for example, you had 38.5 degrees centigrade as your body temperature. So you take the drug X, and then your body temperature drops to 37.8 degrees centigrade. Okay, so with this, we are having information which is raw about your body temperature. So this is an example of what we call raw information. Okay, this is raw information. So assuming the process of you getting this raw information is you have got 10 people that have taken drug X, and then you have now collected their temperatures across from each of them. So you will have data for 10 people. All that data is what you can term as raw information. Okay, so data is basically raw information that is collected on different variables. Anything or any attribute or characteristic about any phenomena, about any physiological process, about anything that varies is what we call a variable. So in this case, the variable is the temperature. Temperature becomes a variable. Okay? So the variable can take any value, just like what we have seen with the temperature. Okay? So I guess that is very clear there. Now, the data that we can collect can be categorized in different ways. Often you have heard of these two broad categories, the two categories of data. One being the qualitative data, and the second being the quantitative data. Okay, so these can be the broad categorization of data. So let's look at each of these. So we usually get qualitative data when people describe their experiences in narrative forms. So someone describes their experience maybe having a particular disease, and they tell you all these words about the experience. And we can also call this data what we call as categorical data. Categorical data. And under this, basically, we have what we call uh, nominal data. Okay, nominal data, which is basically data that is categorical, that the categories don't have any ranking, or the ranking doesn't make any meaning. Okay, things like gender, we have female, male, and the other genders. It doesn't matter which gender you start with, because they don't carry a numerical value. So when we come to quantitative data, we can have data that is also called ordinal data. Ordinal data. With this, the ranking is very, very important, because it carries meaning. If you say someone has stage 3 cancer, it has meaning compared to if you say someone has stage 1. Okay, the ranking is very, very vital, because it communicates something. Okay, so that is what we call ordinal data. Okay. The other category of quantitative data is what we call discrete data, which can also be termed as continuous data. Continuous data. This data can actually take any form. Okay, it can take any value. It can take any value. Things like height, age. They can take any value. Blood pressure, glucose levels. They are called continuous data or discrete data. But the other very important thing that you actually need to know is that the categorization of this data to the different categories is very important, because it allows us to know how we can collect data and how we can analyze it and even present it. Okay, so this data categorization is very key. And therefore, if we want to collect data, we need to know at what level are we collecting this data. So we have what we call levels of measurement. Okay, levels of measurement. And when we talk about this, we actually have 4 levels of measurement. The first one is the one we already talked about, which is nominal level. Okay, with this, no order. The order is not very important. It doesn't give us information. And then the next one is what we call the ordinal level, which basically means that ranking or the order is vital, because it is actually communicating something, just like what we have seen. And then we have what we call interval scale. So these levels of measurement can also be called scale of measurement. Okay, so we have what you call interval scale. With the interval scale, basically the point here is that uh, you have uh, you have a scale where there is the intervals are actually meaningful and equal, but the key thing is that uh, there is no what we call the true, there is no true zero, the true zero. For example, temperature. If you say the temperature of one object is zero, it does not necessarily mean that there is no temperature. So this zero is actually what we call arbitrary. Okay, that means that it does not carry significance. Yes, it doesn't mean that the zero, that it doesn't mean that the zero actually does not exist. That's what it means. So the next, the fourth level of measurement or scale of measurement is what we call the ratio scale. Okay, with ratios, you are having one quantity dividing it with the other. Okay, one quantity over the other. It doesn't matter whether the quantity is actually whether the quantity is the same or not. So, for example, if you want to say the doctor to patient ratio, it means you're going to get the number of doctors divided by the number of patients. Okay, this one quantity divided by, but of course these are individuals, but they differ on what roles they actually play. Or basically looking at the number of beds divided by the number of patients that you have. You are basically having one quantity divided by the other. I hope that is very, very clear. Now let's go back to what we termed as variables. What we termed as variables. Okay? So variables can be divided into two. You can have what you call independent variables and then the dependent variable. Now, in our example for using the drug X to reduce temperature, we can say that drug changing the dosage of drug X can influence the temperature. So therefore, this dosage here becomes the independent variable, whereas the temperature becomes the dependent variable. The dependent variable changes in accordance with how much drug is given. Okay, so for example, if you're looking at people eating certain food, and then after some time you check their blood glucose, it is the food that will influence the blood glucose. So this means that this is actually the independent variable, whereas this will become independent variable. In other words, what the researcher manipulates is independent, and then the impact or the effect of the variation in the dependent affects the consequence or affects the dependent variable. Okay, so that is very, very, very important for you to note. So in this session, we have realized that we have different measures of scale and the different types of variables, and we have also seen the differences between what we call data and a variable. Thank you very much for listening.